So let's talk about local stories, because I had gone a little time and thought, hey, St. Louis is getting better. We aren't having all these problems. The other day I flip on Twitter and I see people standing on top of cop cars that have their lights running, jumping up and down, taking photographs, screaming, hitting that thing. What in the hell is going on in St. Louis?
Well, so what you're describing happened this most recent weekend here in St. Louis, and I had a conversation a couple of days ago with John Hayden, who's the police chief of the city of St. Louis, and he wanted to talk about this. And there was there was an energy to his discussion about it for a couple of different reasons. First of all, that should have been a story that went national. It did not. It would have gone national if something bad had happened, and something bad could have happened. And Chief Hayden's point was, so you have all these people. Washington Avenue is a very popular spot in St. Louis, nightclub spot. People, and it's been known even during the pandemic for some issues, with people partying late at night, and when we had
drag
restrictions
racing was going on. Yeah.
Right. Well, all that stuff downtown. Yeah, our solution to stop drag racing in downtown St. Louis during the pandemic was to put up barriers because no one else was downtown. So that's the solution they came up with. I'm telling you, it's frightening what happened. So you had all these kids emptying out of the bar. There was a cop down there, one cop in a car, and people start jumping on top of the car. They're twerking, they're dancing, they're breaking the windshield. This police officer uses an amazing amount of restraint. We talk about these cops have to make snap decisions, and they do. But this cop could have done something that would have maybe been really bad for the people involved, for himself. If he gets out of that car at the wrong time,
he could be in prison.
He could be dead. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could have happened here, and they didn't. But what makes us think that that's somehow acceptable behavior? And, it was almost tough for our mayor, Tashara Jones, the new mayor of St. Louis, to criticize. She's very, very critical of the police, to criticize the people who were protesting. She did. She said there have to be consequences, not protesting, I'm sorry, jumping on the car and destroying. The car was totaled, by the way. So she was critical of that, saying they have to face consequences. But it was almost like if you heard her, respond to that, she was pained to have to say that. In a strange way. It's bizarre. And that's where we are, sadly, in the city of St. Louis on a regular basis.
What's going on with the psychology of a community that doesn't say these behaviors are not acceptable and we're just going to clear them off? Is it because the only way to clear them off is to use force, and force is now looked poorly upon? I mean, I just can't understand.
Yeah.
Why does a community, because I look at that and I feel I have to temper my sense of anger, because I think these people are out of control. They've proven that they're out of control.
Yes.
And the only way to stop that is to literally force them to be in control. But I don't think that makes it any better.
Well, I think that your anger is my anger, is most people's anger, including people who live in the city, including African Americans who see this and they're horrified as well. But this goes back to the media right now. The way people tell me, well, you're the media. Well, I'm a talk show host, all right? And I've done this for a long time. I used to be in, more directly in the news business. In other words, I was a news anchor or a news director. But we're afraid. The media, the mainstream media, is afraid to show things like that to a certain extent, because that if you show a clip like what happened in St. Louis on CNN or other outlets, then that's going to appear like it's racist to a certain extent, and they don't want to trigger people that way. So I think there's a lot of anger with defund the police. You talk to people in these communities that are affected, they don't want to defund the police. If you talk to progressive activists and the mayor of St. Louis and Cori Bush, the new congresswoman from the city of St. Louis, that not only wants to defund the police, but wants to defund the Pentagon, those are the people giving that movement the momentum. It's not regular people who live in houses where crime is riddling their neighborhoods. And I don't know how you change that. I really don't. Because it's a frightening time right now where the narrative, and this happens, I guess it's happened over time, where the minority sometimes gets that voice on the media because they're better organized. They have a PR firm or they have connections with the media. So most normal voices do get drowned out a little bit in a lot of different discussions. But on this one, with crime in particular, I don't know how we have a discussion that solves problems and reduces violent crime, because there's unequal treatment in the media of these stories. And the police are often blamed, right? It's not in the city of St. Louis, Vance, where we have George Floyd and you have the situation from Columbus, Ohio and North Carolina. I can't find a story from the period where Mike Brown was shot to today where there was an armed person in the city of St. Louis that was killed by a white police officer because he's racist. That hasn't existed. But if you listen to the media coverage, if you listen to Tashara Jones, if you watch 60 Minutes and Bill Whitaker, who swoops into town and does a piece a few weeks ago that makes St. Louis out to be the biggest problem in St. Louis, according to 60 Minutes, is white cops shooting black teenagers or black people, which is not happening, but you were led with that impression because 60 Minutes comes in, completely ignores what's really happening in St. Louis, makes Kim Gardner, our circuit attorney, out to be the victim. And the one thing that I would say, and I've said it on my show, there are people who are Democrats, people I know, moderate Democrats in this part of the country. They're outraged by this. They were critical of the 60 Minutes story, but their voices are drowned out to a certain extent.
I have a buddy in the county prosecutor's office, and he said, one of the things people don't talk about is there used to be McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis, right?
Right.
So what turned into Boeing, but when they left, there was a huge component of manufacturing that left that were just middle-class, solid jobs. And as soon as that happened, a place like Ferguson went from having every house filled with working class people that had a job, that were there doing things. Now it's gone. And the people that could leave did leave. And so now you have a whole bunch of people that don't have, there's not manufacturing jobs. They're just lying around. I mean, there are jobs out there, but they're not the same.
No, I understand exactly what you mean. And that's such a complicated issue because how do you fix that moving forward? I would suggest that simply talking about defunding the police and all these other things that appear in the news isn't making anyone's lives better in those communities at all. So I think it's a big challenge, and it's real easy to put a soundbite on television and for a guy like me to break it down and come out with with a stance. But where are we actually helping people? And I would point this question toward public officials who on both sides who want to drift toward the easy topics and not talk about solutions. Unfortunately.
So is defund the police as that term, is that like trying to go too far so that you hope like what you ever actually land at is kind of the golden mean?
I think so. I think maybe that would be what they would say because to a certain extent, I'm not opposed to police reform. I think a lot of people on the right are not opposed to police reform. I'm not a big fan of no-knock warrants. The court addressed that recently. I'm not a fan of a lot of things that police are allowed to do, but I don't think that all police are racist, and I think they're up against really, really bad people on a regular basis, and they have to see things and confront things and contend with things that none of us would ever have to do. Just to think of rolling up on a crime scene when there's a murder, a kid that's been shot, any of these things, sex crimes, things along those lines. So I understand that. I guess the point on that would be, Vance, that yes, because there are reforms that are needed when it comes to social workers or whatever other approach. Drug crimes is something that I would certainly be very much a fan of backing off of more intense policing because I think we've made a lot of mistakes. But because we have to reform the police with whatever social worker or taking a look at these things in a different way, that doesn't mean you take police away from the ability to crack down on violent criminals and people that are breaking the law and stealing things. Did you hear this story, by the way, that one of the guys that's running for the mayor of Atlanta who wants to defund the police in broad daylight yesterday, some kids roll up on him, take his car. He gets dragged for like a city block. This guy wants to defund the police. So
he got drugged?
Yeah, for like a block.
Oh,
and he wants to defund the block. Maybe he's just counting on a great insurance settlement. It's just about the insurance settlement at this point. You don't have to worry about cracking down on criminals.
People don't actually realize this because it's not a part of American culture that we've had to worry about in a long time. But when I lived in Kenya, one of the most dangerous things that happened was street kids. So there'd be a group of kids, they're 14 to 17 years old, particularly guys. They've got a bunch of testosterone. They're trying to prove who they are. And the one way you keep them cleaned up is that you've got a beat cop around. You've got people out there looking around being like, hey, knock it off.
Right.
And once that spins out of control, where young kids realize like, hey, we can do what we want here. Nothing negative is going to happen if we go steal or we go cause some ruckus. And like once that spins out of control, getting it back contained, I don't have any idea how you do that.
You're exactly describing what happened in St. Louis last weekend with the kids on the cop cars, right? There are no. Now, I said the mayor says there should be consequences. Will there be? First of all, just even finding the people that were involved, you can match up video and pictures, but there won't be any consequences for. And a lot of them, some of them looked underage to me, which is another interesting question. But no, there won't be consequences, and they know that. There's no shock. Nobody should be surprised that crime is spiraling out of control, violent crime in particular, in cities across the country.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.